Hello, I'm Brian. Thanks everybody for coming, and we're hoping this will help you all feel a lot more comfortable doing the ski-to-sea canoe leg. This is Alan Bergmuller and Ted Shear. Both have done the river numerous times, so we're here to help you and answer questions and just make you feel a lot more comfortable when it comes to your turn to get in the boat and paddle. So with that said, I wanted to see how many people have done the race before. Raise your hand if you've done the race. Okay.
3.
You guys can sit in the back. How many have never done the race? There we go. That's the crowd we're looking for. How many have never been in a canoe? Okay, there we go. We're looking for them too. Good, you guys are perfect. You're our target audience because we want you to have a good time. And so some of the things we're going to talk about today is just kind of show you the stroke and remind yourselves you're a team, that you want to work together, and it's a long race, and how to prepare, how we like to prepare as having it done so many times. And in the past, canoers were always really secretive of their tricks and everything that they'd use, so we're here to spill it for you. You know, I should have a mask on my face, but but I don't.
How many times have you done the race, Brian?
At least 30. So I and every time I think I know the river till I go and I can't. Where does this turn go? So it's just a matter of kind of looking at the water and knowing which way to follow. And one of my things, while we're on that quick little subject, is I like to follow the bubbles. You'll see a little trail of bubbles. I really like to kind of follow those. When in doubt, I follow the bubbles. So you'll see them all of a sudden start drifting across the river. Just go with them a little bit because it's going to be deeper over there, because shallow water is not your friend. Okay. And so first thing I wanted to show you is you see a lot of us using these bent shaft paddles, and the reason for that is because when you're actually paddling and you're pulling, you see right there when I'm at my strongest point, the blade is actually perfectly perpendicular to my body to do a lot of pulling like that. So that's one of the things that you see a lot of people using. And anyways, with that said, I was going to get into telling you that it's a long race. I googled it just yesterday that it takes the same time you'll be in the boat as if you drove from Bellingham Airport to just past Tacoma. So you want to be prepared for that kind of a paddle with food and drink, because it's a long ways, and comfort is also your friend. So
is that like your time or average time?
That is average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
I might just
you're
be
probably,
before
you're
Tacoma.
Probably
No,
Vancouver.
SeaTac,
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it takes a long time, and it feels like a long time no matter how you do it. So, and some of the things I like to tell beginning paddlers is you got to remember it's really important that you keep your strokes timed together, so that the bow person's going to set the pace and keep a steady, nice pace, and the stern person follows each time at the same stroke rate. And you don't need to lift your paddle way out of the water to come back. And if there's usually a headwind, you want to kind of feather your paddle into the wind to help yourself, because there's almost always a headwind on the Nooksack. So I like to keep my paddle a little bit feathered on the return, but don't go fast and then stop. And then you just got to keep a steady rhythm and together. That's the timing part. Another real important thing in a long distance canoe race is that you trim the boat out properly with your weight balance, because if a boat's like this the whole way, or like this would be with the stern person in the air, it's going to make it spin around and really hard to steer, and too heavy in the back, you're just going to be pushing the whole way, and shallow water is just going to bring you way down slow. So you want to make sure, and that's what we'll look at with you guys today, is the trim of your boats and seeing if we can help. That's why a lot of boats have adjustable seats too, so that you can adjust your weight so it's just perfect. And so there's ways of doing that by, for instance, dumping a lot of water in your boat when you're just sitting still in the lake, sitting still, and the water should drift to the back of the boat, or to the front of the boat slightly. But once you start paddling, that water is going to move to the back of the boat, hopefully, and you'd want to check your trim. You'd want to almost put a gallon of water or so in there, and then as you start paddling, you want that water to settle just at the stern paddler's feet, if you can, and then that would be just ideal trim. So if you can adjust your seats or anything, or you have your water bottle and you're maybe 2 bow heavy, put it behind you, or stern person, put it in front. Use your water bottle for a little bit of weight to move it around to help you trim the boat out. That's real important too. And to talk about it. And speaking of water, so this is a little system a lot of us use for our water, and that is get a tube like this, and you see I've cut the angle at the tube at an angle so it'll go into my water bottle, and then I tape it in like that, and then I have a little piece of Velcro on there that I'll have sitting on here, Velcro to the side of the boat. And so when I come running down, I just can grab this and put it on my little thing there, and it'll stay. Because then if I tip over, it's just gonna break away. And when I go to get out, I can just pull it off. But then it's right here, hanging here for me, and it's really nice because I don't like anything around my waist or shoulders, because that's gonna get really tired after 3 hours. So I do this a lot. A lot of guys you'll see walking around with these things on their neck, and that's what it's for. And then I put a little tape on the end, so when I'm, or just hang on my tooth really nice. It just hangs there on my tooth really nicely. So that's another little trick. I'm just trying to show you some of these tricks that we use to be comfortable. And make sure you tape this into your water bottle. And I just take a regular water bottle and carve a little hole in it, stick it in there, maybe put some power drink in there, whatever you want, but not too much because you want it diluted usually. And then the other thing I like to use, I take these little Cliff Blocks, or they have the little pads and stuff, but these are little like gummy bear things that are really pretty good. And I take these, and they're little blocks like gummy bears, and I'll take duct tape and make it so that it's doubled over on a rail right in front of me, and I'll set these right on there so that when I'm paddling, I can just grab them, pop them in my mouth, and they just dissolve slowly, and they keep you energized and stuff. Used to be we'd all cut up fruit and put it in a little Tupperware thing, and put it in front of us and grab fruit. A lot of people do that, but I've gotten down to these, or the little pad things, the little Cliff or a goo. What are those? Ted?
Okay, I have one here.
Yeah, he lives off them. Cliff Shots or something like that. And then you can just, there you go. And you can just duct tape those onto your boat too.
Just tape this little top part, and there's a little serrated edge here. You just rip it off.
Yeah, they take too long. So I just got these. And then you got to have a hand to squeeze it. These you just pop in your mouth, and you're good to go. And they just slowly dissolve with your drink, and you can just kind of keep them in there. And they really do help. Because like I said, it's a 3-hour paddle, and even the minnow got lost in 3 hours. It was a 3-hour sail. So, you want to have supplies. And so, let's see. And now I'm going to let Alan do a little talking because I'm about hoarse now.
Okay.
And Alan's a search and rescue pro, and he'll tell you about some of the safety features and maybe what to do in case of an emergency, which is not going to happen. Okay? You're going to be fine.
Well, didn't know I was going to be on camera. This is intimidating. Just wanted to talk about safety for the most part. Okay. So I moved here from Montana 2 years ago. Did the race for the first time last year, but I've done a lot of downriver racing and slalom racing in particular. And Nooksack's deceptively difficult, challenging in my opinion. It's always kind of murky, so it's hard to see rocks and stobs and other hazards, or even shallow water. The shallow water still takes me by surprise, and all the training runs we've done last year and this year. So I think Brian's emphasis on paddling in time with each other, paddling on opposite sides most of the time, that's going to be most efficient. As you come up to perceived hazards or turns in the river, I think you want to bear in mind that, as he said, follow the bubble line, but if the bubble line is taking you pretty close to a cut bank, you've got to keep that in mind. I think cut banks and unseen stobs under the water that can mess with you are concerns you've got to watch for. So any kind of unusual disturbances in the surface of the water, you've got to watch for those and try to avoid them. Turning around anything that looks sketchy, that might bobble you and tip you over, or just bobble you at minimum, is going to be disconcerting. Where the river turns and cuts away at the outside of the turn, you don't want to be getting swung too wide, and because you'll either be chewing on branches that are hanging over the river, or you can be washed into that cut bank, and that can flip you, and that would be kind of deep and fast. So, and definitely
Anticipate.
not easy to recover from that. On that note, if you have any means to add some flotation to your canoes, I don't see any boats here with flotation bags that are actually official bags. You can do a truck in or two and just kind of get it under the main thwart and try to tie that off. It's essentially a PFD for your canoe. So if you do flip, I don't want to go into the worst case scenarios here, but I think if you do have flotation in your boat, it's going to be easier to recover, dump it out, and get back in the race, versus just to kind of impress you with what it's like to swim with one of these boats if it's full of water. If we fill up any of these 16 or 17 foot canoes with a garden hose, you know how much that weighs? Any guesses?
A lot.
Oh, yeah, that's a great response, just a lot. But any guesses within
800.
2,000.
2,000 is right.
Wow.
So you got a 2,000 pound sea anchor that you're trying to swim to shore, or worse yet, it's upstream of you and there's a hazard downstream of you. You don't want to be between a hazard and 2,000 pounds of weight, and that's not factoring in the speed of the river. The river's going 3 or 4 miles an hour, and that hits something or pins you. It's a lot of pressure. So I like to emphasize that fact. I don't want to scare you. You're out here to have fun, right? But bear in mind there's hazards to floating the Nooksack, and this race, there'll be people out there. There'll be search and rescue. I saw a good presence last year with people in jet boats. I think there was some shore-based safety, and the other racers should be looking out for you. And I think the onus is on them to help you. That's the sportsman thing to do. Stop and help someone. You might be that person stopping to help. But so if you go float the river between now and the race, that's almost more sketchy than being in the race, because you're potentially out there just you and your partner, and I would encourage you to go with another boat. I'm not big on one boat trips, so I'm getting preachy here a little bit. My search and rescue genes kick in a little bit here, but I'm not big on one boat trips. I think 2 boat trips minimum, 3 boat trips are even better. So, but you can train with someone else, another team of 2. I would encourage that. You don't have to do the whole stretch of river. I would encourage you to break it up in at least 2 outings if you can get out there. Do the upper part, Everson down to Meridian, or Meridian down to the finish line. So, but you can get out on Lake Padden. I live in Ferndale, so I get out on Lake Terrell almost once a week right now. So get out on flat water, practice these skills, especially if you're new to this. Practice some of these fundamentals before you go hit the Nooksack. I wouldn't wait till the day of the race to get on that river. I would at least go take at least one of those chunks before the race day. Getting off into the weeds here, I guess.
Well, I was going to say about safety. Also, there's a lot of these that are inexpensive. You can put your cell phone in, so you take this with you, so you have your cell phone nice and dry. Really inexpensive, and good to have your phone with you. And from now till the race, there'll be a lot of boats out there on the weekends too. You'll see on Saturday and Sundays, going from one place or the other that you can maybe team up with, and just keep an eye on each other. But he's right, it is kind of dangerous when you're by yourself. And another thing I thought about when you were talking, Alan, is when you do see snags and stuff, you really want to try to get your boat going straight and not perpendicular, because the chances of hitting that and falling over is a lot greater than if you just were going straight and kind of roll off it. And if you hit anything like that, you just want to be loose in your hips and keep steady, and just let the boat go under you. You don't want to lean your whole body over to be top heavy to tip it over. Just kind of roll with it, and loose hips will keep your ship up. So you want to be. Question, anybody?
There will not be a organized practice day on the river.
Pardon?
No,
Will there
no.
be an organized practice
No.
day on the river?
But I'll be in Everson probably every Sunday at 10 o'clock. That's what we usually get there around 10 on Sundays. So anybody's there, flotilla is fine. You know.
I thought of one other thing to add to some safety stuff, and I'll probably think of a few more. First of all, just to reinforce what Brian just said about if you're going to hit something, here's the canoe, the river's going that way, and here's a rock or a stop. If you hit something like this sideways, your instincts aren't to lean away from danger. You got to fight those instincts and at least lean the boat so the gunnel that's hitting that object is down lower than the other one. Because if you
Basically,
lean away,
lean downstream, basically.
yeah, you want to lean into something you're going to hit. Otherwise, the boat's going to roll up and then sink and fill and wrap on that object. What he said about loose hips is good. Just like, kind of lean into it a little bit. Definitely don't lean away, but stay loose and you'll probably pivot off of that. The other thing I wanted to add was this is a universal language, but just some basic river hand signals, which might help search and rescue know whether you're okay or not. If you have a little mishap and you kind of get yourself gathered up and they're swooping in to help, and they might actually be kind of a hindrance to you getting back underway. If you tap your head, that means you're okay. I don't know if search and rescue is going to ask you that question, but this is a question and an answer. So this means, are you okay? If I point to you and say, do this, because you're too far away to audibly talk, and you respond that you're okay. If you're not, this is the universal sign for what? Distress, right?
And you're going to have a whistle with you too.
And the other thing is, if you are in distress, this crossed arms are the sign for medical. This is stop and this is go. I think so. Anything vertical is go. Anything horizontal is stop. And this is the question: are you okay? It's an answer. Yes, I'm okay. And medical, or yes, I'm in distress.
And a whistle. You'll have a whistle, and you can hear those from a long ways away. So they're your friend too. Couple other little off-topic things that you'll see people doing there is they'll deck their canoe with plastic, even though it's not raining or anything. But that's also to help with the wind, because the wind will get inside a boat, and trying to steer a boat in the wind is like riding a weather vane. It's gonna want to turn, so don't be frustrated with that and think, oh, our boat's always turning one way or the other. It's the wind. Even if it's a little breeze, it'll keep turning you. You fight the wind a lot. So just be aware of that. And that's why a lot of people will cover the midsection with the plastic to keep the wind from getting inside there too. And it does maybe deflect a few drips of your paddle and keep the boat drier. And I've seen people, this boat has a little bailer. If it gets too much water in it, we can open it up as we paddle and it sloshes out. But in case you wanted to take a plastic jug, I saw somebody had one here for a bailer, which is a good idea to tie it in here. In case you lean over and you get some water in there, you can scoop this real quick and get it out. The other thing is a big sponge, right? Where the place I told you will make all the water collect in one place, so it's not sloshing around each time and moving around. If you have a big sponge, just put it in there to kind of keep the water in one spot. And then when you think it's full, you get that water out, because it's an extra 5 or 10 pounds. And when you spend an extra $500 to make your boat 5 or 10 pounds lighter, really, get rid of the water. So be prepared for that too. Just those little tricks kind of help in the long run. They aren't deciding factors, but they help eliminating that factor. So the other thing that we didn't talk about is, and these boats aren't really set up for it, but it's real important to try to get a foot brace for the bow paddler, because basically when you get in a boat and you're sitting there like this and you're paddling, you want to have, this seat will adjust so I can move forward, so I have a foot brace, because when you take a stroke, you're going to rotate, and it's not so much pulling with your arms, because your arms aren't your big muscles, your torso is, so you want to be able to plant it way in there and kind of rotate. So you're going to, before you put it in, you're going to think about this shoulder back a little bit and this shoulder forward, so that when you put the paddle in, you're rotating your torso to take it, and then that way you're using your big strong back muscles. And you don't want to go so far back this way, because then you start lifting up the water like and then it sucks the front of the boat down. That creates this porpoising that slows you down. You just want to be kind of quick and smooth instead of chukunk, chukunk, and all these splashes. And when you put the paddle in, you want it to be nice. You take a second for it to go in if you have to, and then pull on it. But if you're going like this through the water and there's a lot of bubbles going around your paddle, you're not being efficient. You're just pulling too many bubbles. So you almost have to put it in and then turn and go and pull it out pretty quick, feather it back, and just keep that rate going like this. And then when it's time to switch to the other side, usually is what happens is the stern person will say, it used to be switch, now we just go hut, because I think it takes less breath. So that you'll hear a hut. So you're paddling, and then it'll say hut as you're starting to paddle. That means you're going to finish this side really strong, and then you're both going to switch. And then you're on this side, right? And then when you get tired of this side, right when you start your paddle, the stern person should say hut or switch, and then you're just going to know you're both going to switch together. So that's how you switch your sides evenly, is the stern person will tell you when, and the bow person just keeps the rhythm going real nice and smooth, whatever you're comfortable with. But it's really efficient that you both put your paddles in at the same time and go at the same time. Otherwise, it's like a bicycle with pedals that don't line up or something. You know, you just want to be real smooth with it, and don't go too far back like that. And no, not a lot of head bobbing. Just rotating. It's all rotating. There's also a lot of great videos on YouTube to watch too, I've noticed. So there's a lot of good ones there, and they'll show you the same thing. And to try to make your paddle kind of go vertical, not so much out here. And if you get into a jam, and the bow person sees, oh gosh, we're going to hit that, there's a couple things you can do by each stroke pulling this way a little bit. That's a draw stroke, where you're trying to draw the front of the paddle. You keep the same rhythm, but you just kind of like do this. Or if I wanted to go that way and I'm on this side, you do a sweep. You just push it, and you basically just think about just trying to push the bow over. And you'll find that's really helpful a lot. Just sweeping away from an object or something, or drawing this way to get out of the way, you know. Because there'll be a lot of traffic too, and just go steer as wide as you can, usually to the inside. So, but it's that way to kind of keep the rhythm going, and then there's more advanced moves where you do like this to turn it real fast if you had to, but I wouldn't worry about those, where you just paddling on this side, and if I wanted to turn that way, I could use a rudder up here, because it's a lot quicker and more maneuverable if the bow person really rudders. Because if the stern person's ruddering to correct all the time, it's like putting on a brake on half the boat. It just is going to slow you down. So you want to try to correct any turns with speed and keep it turning. And sometimes you can lean a boat a little bit to make it turn. So if I wanted to go to the left, I would lean a little bit to the right on this side, and it would make the boat slowly carve off that way or carve off that way. It helps a little bit to do some leaning sometimes, if you know, because the wind's going to really bother you. It usually does. So, and it keeps you cool. So, okay. So, any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you touch on the plastic? What do you mean by that? Like plastic wrap?
Yeah. Just, you know, any kind of plastic. You know, the stuff you can get at Lowe's.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people use old the pieces of plastic they put on lumber. You can go to a lumber store and pull that, and that stuff's great. And then you just want to make it come to right behind the bow person, and you don't want it to be blocking the back person. Like, so this one is kind of a silly boat because of this bar here, but so this one, it would come to about here. And sometimes you might stick some little foamy like that in the middle to make it arch a little bit too. I even have a little piece of plastic on here for any splashes that'll roll off to the side.
Oh, nice. And then are they like just attaching it from both sides? Or are you wrapping it? Like
No, just duct taping it right along the edge here.
All right.
Duct taping it right along the edge. The other thing, when you put your number on for the ski to see, make sure it's up high, not way down low in the water line.
Okay.
A lot of people seem to put it too low, and so you want to keep it up as high as you can out of the water line. And yeah, no, the
And
duct
on
tape
that side.
is your friend. You'll have bring it with you.
I'll bring my duct tape.
Yeah, and then just pull it as tight as you can. Usually I put it on one side, put it on real tight, little tabs here and there, and then I trim it right along here, and then put it on duct tape, pull it tight, working forward so it overlaps like a roof.
Contractor bags work great for it. I've used those. And then you can put your spare paddle in the middle and it creates a little tent.
Yep.
Bring an extra paddle.
Yep. You just go like this. I have these little like clips for holding your garden tools up that'll fit on here, and you just put one right here for a spare paddle, and that makes a nice little tent too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Any more? Yeah.
I know weather is will affect this answer. What is a typical apparel? What do people wear?
I usually wear something like a poly pro shirt that will dry fast and not too hot. And
I mean, if it's a cold, blustery day, you know, it could be.
I'll wear these poly pro pants.
He promises it won't be.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like this.
No, I'll wear these
Okay.
poly pro pants.
Yeah.
And then I usually wear something like those, sometimes the little shoes that will drain out water because you're going to be standing in the water. Tennis shoes get really heavy with water, and so I like to wear something that's going to drain the water real fast when I get in and still be comfortable on my feet. And then I usually have, if I wear something that you can get out and run, sometimes I take them off. And before the finish line, I make sure my face is clean, you know, because you're going to be running up the beach. You know, at the Ferndale Bridge, you want to clean your face. And maybe drink your last bit of water somewhere around there too, because when you're at the Ferndale Bridge, you got about 15 more minutes. And at the guide bridge, you probably are about an hour 10 minutes away. And at the first bridge, I think, is the Hannigan Road, you're about 50 minutes in. So that's about the timeline of the bridges. So the first bridge, you've done 50 minutes or an hour. The next bridge, you've done, what is it? The I-5 bridge is, no, then there's the first bridge is the Hannigan Bridge, and that's like maybe 25 minutes, and then the guide is 50 minutes, and then the I-5 bridge is getting close to 2 hours, yeah. And at I-5, you're about 20 minutes from the finish line and 5 minutes from Ferndale. And those turns there at I-5 can be really shallow on the left side. But I noticed just since we did it last week to this week, the river's gone up 2 feet. So some of those corners you can cut, you know, because it's a big distance to, I see the current over there. But if you take a string and mark that circle, that's like an extra 100 feet. Whereas if you can just buzz the inside a little bit, then you save 100 feet, which is quite a bit in a canoe race. It's just maybe a little more work, but it's usually worth it if the water's high enough. But if it's not, and you hit sluggy water, boy, it'll really stops you. Because what happens is the canoes go into this with the shallow water, and then they push a wave off the bottom that hits back to your boat and lifts you up even more. So if you get stuck in shallow water, it's hard to do, but the trick is to pick up your speed and try to get up over that wave so it kind of carries you through that shallow water. And that's about the best way to get through shallows, is try to slide, lean way forward, get your weight forward over your own little wave that's hitting you on the bottom. So, yep.
Can you talk a little bit about how to position the people in the boat, like experience versus non-experience?
Yeah, that's a good
heavy
question.
versus light?
About putting the people in the boat, and usually the more experienced paddler should be in the back. But sometimes they're the bigger person, so then that creates an uneven trim problem. But it equals out in skill level in keeping the boat going straight and keeping you happy. So if you're evenly weighted and the stern person and one's better than the other, then they should be in the back, because the stern person is the one that can really direct where the canoe's going, because they have way more control over the direction of the boat because of the way the paddle just pushes the boat here and there. And so I just want to also remind you, you're pushing the boat forward with your feet. Okay, so that's why it's important to try to build up a footrest for both of you, front and back, even if it's a life jacket stuck in the front, because as you go, it's like this. You're turning and you're pushing. If you watch sprint kayakers or racers, that's a good example to watch a sprint kayak race. You see their knees are like on bicycles. Push, 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 push. And they're pushing that boat forward with their legs. And it's really smooth along the water versus trying to hold it, you know, your butt there and do it there and just pulling with your arm. It's more, you'll feel it. You'll feel what I mean when I say kind of load your leg a little bit and push that boat smoothly forward with your foot. If you have a good foot brace, and you'll feel the difference in it. So, any more questions?
To clarify that last one, so if the more experienced person is heavier, put them in the front, even though they have more experience?
No,
or no?
in the back.
In the back, okay.
Because they'll be able to steer the boat. But if you're equal, boats are set up actually for the stronger, bigger guy to go up in the front because they're actually grabbing the clean water too. So you just have to trim the boat out separately. But I think that's beyond this group here right now. So.
Becky,
How much does river conditions and height affect your time?
We repeat the question.
She asked how much time difference is there with the water level changing, and I would say 10 or 20 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Higher's faster.
Yeah, higher's faster, but when it gets really high, and they have canceled the race before because it got over, if you look at this Ferndale gauge you can see online, if it gets over 10 feet, I mean, the river is just really easy to paddle. There's nothing there. It's just smooth everywhere, no jams. But the problem is if you tip over, there's nothing to grab onto because the sides are all blackberries. And that's why when it becomes really dangerous. So at low water, it's swirly and going from this little pond to this little pond, and it gets a lot more turbulent, but then you can also stand up almost anywhere. So it's a lot safer. And so when you do come across swirls and stuff, you'll see these little boils. Just relax. The boat's gonna go over them. You know, just kind of keep it. You'll see swirls like blenders going down. You kind of want to shoot right down between them, and you think, oh, it's gonna push us that way. Well, that's when it's gonna push you back right away too. So you just want to be really relaxed and don't slow down too much because then you lose your control. So you want to keep the boat momentum going a bit. But also, if you're in a sketchy situation, you don't want to raise your hands up. You want to keep your paddle near the water because you can slap it on the water to help yourself hold up real quick for a fraction of a second, or run it across like you're buttering bread to kind of keep your balance up a little bit. So that's real important to do that too.
One thing that beginners tend to do when they feel like they're threatened is grab
the gun will grab.
the gun. They just grab it. It's an instinctual response, and that's one thing you don't want to do. You want to have your paddle somewhere where you can brace yourself out of whatever trouble you're into.
Yeah.
I had two things, if I can interject.
Yeah.
So one's a safety issue, and one's just kind of reinforcing some things Brian said about the paddling stroke. He was talking about the catch at the start of the stroke, where you just like a incrementally short little pause, and then you take the stroke, again, using your torso. One thing this is a bit of a nuanced statement, but if you think about, instead of trying to pull your paddle blade through the water, think about trying to pull yourself past where you put your paddle in the water. As if these are posts in the river, and you're grabbing them and pulling yourself by. So that catch, you should try to make it feel like molasses, like the river is molasses, like you're trying to like stick it in, and then with the right amount of force, and it can be, if you're paddling at a high rate, you can give it a lot of force. Paddling it at a slower tempo, you can still over paddle. My first canoe race was a 26 miler in Idaho, and we were passing big strapping dudes like football linebackers, and it was because they were paddling too hard. Their catch was splashy, and they weren't like sticking the blade in there and pulling themselves past. So my buddy and I were not blowing by, but we were going by people, and it was my first long canoe race, and it was like, oh, it's technique. It isn't all power. The other thing is back to a safety thing, and Brian touched on this for a second about when the river Nooksack's low, you can almost stand up anywhere. That's fine. I just wanted to kind of reinforce when you first, again, I don't want to go here. I don't want you to flip. But if you happen to flip, don't have your first instinct be to stand up because, oh, I felt some bottom there. If you're in a faster stretch of river, it's anything more than just over your knee deep, you don't want to, the first thing to stand up, whether you have control of your boat or not. If there is some kind of foot and trap, natural or man-made, and you try to stand up and the river's going this way, if you can't do a push-up in water that's deeper than your arms are long, and because your foot's entrapped, you're going to be in the world of hurt. So, and your foot can be entrapped in any number of ways. So there's rebar, there's man-made hazards. So don't try to stand up until you're in slower water. So you can do the defensive swim position, which I'm not going to lie on the dewy grass. Sorry, Anna. So if the current's going that way, this is initially your best position to be in. You can backstroke with your arms, hold onto your paddle if you held onto it, and work your way toward the slower, more favorable shore and stand up. You can also do an aggressive swim back to safety. But and remember, don't be downstream of your swamp canoe. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add those two things because
I have had short little ropes on the front and the bow of my boat when I was in rough water, so that if I did go over, I had something easier to grab than trying to hold on to the boat where I'd be a few feet away. And I could swim and pull it. I've only had to do that once, so use it too often, but it is a safety thing. It's just a short little piece of rope that'll come out, and you'll know it's there to be able to grab or pull it ashore. But I have a feeling you guys are going to do fine. So, a question?
I'm just kind of playing off that a little bit. If we do tip over, obviously you're getting yourself safe is a priority, and then uprighting your canoe. Can you talk us through a little bit about trying to upright your canoe again?
So if you flipped and it's likely gonna pretty much swamp, it'll probably wallow back upright unless you have flotation, like a significant amount, like a big truck inner tube or official float bags. I know some of you don't probably understand quite what those are, but if you have float bags, the boat actually might be easier to rescue upside down if it wants to stay upside down, because then it's just an air chamber. If the truck inner tube is floating and on the surface, you might be able to get to the upstream. And that's another point I think I wanted to make was, if you do flip, you both want to be upstream of the boat, and the best thing is to be up the upstream end where you actually might be able to grab something useful like a rope or like right at the end. Don't just grab it somewhere randomly, even if you're on the upstream side of it. It's going to be harder to swim it to shore. But to get back to your question, if it's wallowing, it's filled with water, you'll want to probably swim it toward, hopefully you're kind of keeping track of, like if you flipped and you know that there's a cut bank here, maybe a fallen tree, you're going to want to swim this way, right? Hopefully you have situational awareness enough to, like, we need to swim toward river left. And then if you're both trying to swim the boat, you might be kicking yourselves. So if someone can maybe be the primary canoe rescuer, and that person can hand off their paddle if they've held onto it to their tandem partner, try to swim the boat, it isn't going to be easy. Swimming this to shore, you're not going to overpower the river, but you can set a ferry angle. So if you try to swim directly toward the shore, you'll get to shore, but you're going to be pretty far down. If you kind of set a 45-degree angle, is any of this making sense? You're swimming, if the current is going that way, and I'm in the middle of the river here, and you're on the shore, if I try to swim directly at you, towing a canoe, I'm going to end up being down here. But if I kind of angle, like I'm trying to swim that way, the river will actually help me get over the shore. So, not easy. It isn't going to be easy to swim one of these canoes ashore. If you feel the bottom and you feel like you're in knee-deep water or less, yeah, you might be able to kind of dig your heels in, put the skids on, try to wrangle the boat. It might be a series of slowing it down until it runs aground, and then trying to dump it out. And again, that's much easier to do sort of in increments. Like, you're not going to like pick it up and dump it out. So just try to like tip a little water out, tip a little more water out, and hopefully you're together at that point, and you can keep rolling it until you've dumped it all out. And at that point, get it completely dry, and hopefully get on your way. So.
Have there been any flips in any of the races?
Oh yeah. And also these boats, a lot of them, like this one, and a lot of them have built-in flotation. That's what these blocked off areas are in the front. And this one has a core that's all flotation that you can't quite see, but it's in there. Also flotation.
My understanding, like on doing some research, was the official flow bags, like you have to drill into the boat to this installation, and like
For the
arming
official
boat,
flow
and the
bags?
truck tires seems better. Is there like info online about that?
I mean, you can, if you get an inner tube, or investing in airbags for a canoe they're really expensive. But if you got a truck inner tube, and it was, you know, you put it in here, so it's an elongated truck inner tube, you could do some parachute cord cross bracing, so it doesn't just pop out.
Oh, you just shove it in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, if you put it onto that board and you flip, it's still gonna want to try to get out.
Put the plastic over that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm racing with a very experienced whitewater canoer, and I'm an experienced whitewater canoer, and we have airbags in our canoe, and it's like this, only it's a black carbon fiber true race boat.
It's kind of pricey
And,
if you're just doing it.
oh right, so but I would probably not do the river without some accessory flotation besides what's built into the canoe. Yeah, all our trips on the river for training this year, we've had airbags in. When we go on padding, we don't. But yeah, that's my opinion. I'm not trying to.
Also, if
Second
anybody
guess
else
Brian's.
is interested in going further with canoeing, and there's now a big thing in the Pacific Northwest where there's outrigger clubs, and there's an outrigger, two of people on, and they're able to paddle with a canoe paddle. But you see how they have the little amas on the side, and a lot of paddlers from this sport with this kind of canoeing have now migrated to outrigger paddling, and everywhere there are now outrigger clubs. If you want to continue and learn, then they're really friendly. It's the Aloha spirit, and so I encourage you to join one of those clubs. And they have 6-man outriggers you get to go out in with 6 people and really learn a lot of stuff. And there's a few in Seattle, Tacoma, 2 in Bellingham clubs that would be happily take you to join their club. So that's an alternative. And those boats, they have rudders where you can steer with your feet, so you can go out into open ocean and have a lot of fun on waves and stuff, on swells, and steer them. And they're really safe because you got that AMA, and if it flips over, it's like super wide boat. It's really fast, and they're really a lot of fun. So if you really like and want to continue canoeing, that's an alternative that's really a lot of fun, is join an outrigger club, and it's really enjoyable way to continue canoeing. So I encourage you to do that too.